These stories were pulled from Reddit. Their authors will be displayed at the beginning of each story. Want to make sure they are given a shout-out for sharing their stories. Only by the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. My heart was pounding, but I couldn't remember why. A bad dream, perhaps? I tried to recall it, but my mind was a haze of shadows and fading images. Suddenly, I heard a faint sound coming from just outside my bedroom door. It was quiet, like someone sweeping the floor with a worn-out broom. As the noise continued, growing slightly louder with each pass, my heart began to race. I knew I was home alone. Maybe it's just the house settling, I told myself, or the wind rustling through the trees outside. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Then a floorboard creaked in the hallway and my stomach dropped. That specific creak only happened when someone stepped on that exact spot. I remembered countless times sneaking in late and wincing as it betrayed my attempts at silence. I tried to sit up and reach for my phone on the nightstand, but my body wouldn't respond. Panic surged through me as I realized I couldn't move a muscle. It felt like invisible chains were binding me to the bed. I opened my mouth to scream, to call for help, but no sound came out. My voice was trapped, smothered by some unseen force. The door handle rattled ever so slightly, and then, with agonizing slowness, it began to turn. The door creaked open, inch by inch, the hinges groaning. My eyes were locked on the widening gap, dread pooling in the pit of my stomach. A shadowy figure stood in the doorway, a mass of darkness with no distinguishable features. Its form was blurred, as if it were made of smoke. As it entered the room, the air grew colder, and a heavy weight pressed down on my chest. The once familiar room now felt alien and threatening. Even the faint glow of the moon through the curtains seemed to dim, swallowed by the growing darkness. The figure moved closer with every slow step, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. I could do nothing but watch, eyes wide with terror. It stopped at the foot of my bed, tilting its head slightly as if observing me. Though I couldn't see any eyes, I felt its gaze piercing through me. The weight of its presence was suffocating, pressing down on me like the shadows themselves were wrapping around my chest. The figure leaned in, looming mere inches away. I desperately wanted to shut my eyes, but I couldn't. I was forced to stare at this dark, looming presence, and then it spoke. The voice wasn't human. It was deep and haunting, like it came from a place not meant for the living. I couldn't understand a single word. It was like the language of shadows, vibrating through my chest and rattling my bones. The sound sent shivers down my spine, the cold penetrating to my core. I felt as though I was suffocating under the weight of the words I couldn't comprehend. I tried again to scream, but no sound escaped me. Then, just as suddenly as the figure had appeared, it was gone. I lay there, gasping for air, my chest heaving as I tried to catch my breath. I could move again. The room seemed brighter, and I stared at the door, half expecting it to still be open. But it was closed, just as it always had been. Was it a nightmare? It felt too real, too vivid to be just a dream. I swung my legs over the side of the bed, my bare feet touching the cold floor. Summoning all my courage, I stood and made my way to the door. My hand hovered over the doorknob, fearful of what I might find on the other side. Taking a deep breath, I turned the knob and pulled the door open. The hallway stretched before me, dimly lit by the nightlight at the far end. I stepped out, the floorboards creaking softly beneath my weight. I checked each room meticulously. The guest room, the bathroom, the small office. Everything was in its place, no signs of an intruder. The front door was locked, the deadbolt secure. The windows were closed, the latches fastened tight. Returning to my bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing my temples as my mind raced to rationalize the experience. Sleep paralysis. That had to be it. I'd read about it before. The sensation of being awake but unable to move, often accompanied by hallucinations. It was a plausible explanation, but it didn't erase the lingering fear. One thing was certain. It felt real. Too real. For those of you who have experienced sleep paralysis, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not just a nightmare. It's something else entirely. An invasion of your mind and body, where you're caught between sleep and waking. You can see and hear things, but you can't move or scream. You're completely at the mercy of whatever your mind, or perhaps something beyond, wants to show you. Experts say sleep paralysis is just a trick of the mind, a glitch when your brain wakes up before your body does, leaving you stuck in a half-dream state. They say that's all it is. But when you're lying there, unable to move, feeling a presence in the room, hearing it whisper in a language you don't understand, and seeing a shadowy figure looming over you, it's hard to believe it's just a glitch. Has this ever happened to you? A family driving toward Cheyenne stopped their station wagon in the middle of a desolate road after spotting a young girl, about 10 years old, walking alone. The sight of a child wandering without her parents in the middle of nowhere alarmed them, so they pulled over to help. The girl, dressed in a skeleton Halloween costume, appeared disoriented and confused. When the family asked what she was doing alone on the road, she said she was trying to find her way back to her hometown, Ataraxia Springs. The father pulled out a map but quickly realized that no such town existed in Wyoming. That child was me. The events surrounding how I was found are well documented and no one disputes them. However, the mystery of how I ended up alone on that road was never explained. No missing child reports fit my description, and even though I told the authorities my parents' names and phone number, they could never be found. All they had to go by was my own story of what happened that night, a story they didn't believe. After years of therapy, I didn't believe it either. I was told I had likely been kidnapped by traffickers and had repressed the trauma, creating my own version of events. I was taught that when memories contradict reality, it's the memories that are wrong, not reality. Over time, I accepted that my childhood memories were false. But something happened last week that made me question everything therapy had taught me. It made me revisit those memories, and now I'm compelled to share my story again. Partly to confront my own experiences, but also to reach out to anyone else who might have gone through something similar. Perhaps those strange old memories aren't as impossible as they seem. Some of these details come from a diary entry I wrote after being found, but much of it is still vivid in my memory. And I remember Ataraxia Springs. Ataraxia Springs was built around an old tuberculosis sanatorium that closed down after the discovery of antibiotics in the late 1920s. This fact was drilled into us during school because the town took its history seriously. The sanatorium across the lake from town still stood, casting an eerie shadow over the water. The older kids would tell ghost stories about it, especially during campfires on the beach. But other than that, the town was your typical American small town. My parents, my real parents, not my foster parents, were good to me and my older sister Marjorie. We had a happy childhood as far as I can remember. Everything was ordinary. Until that night. Halloween was a big deal in our neighborhood. Everyone tried to outdo each other with their costumes. That year was no different. I was thrilled with the skeleton costume my dad had bought me. My sister was too old for trick-or-treating, but she had promised to take me so our parents could stay home and hand out candy. Everything was going fine until Marjorie's punk rocker friends, Ryan, Johnny, and Ashley, showed up on their bikes. I hated them. They had a bad reputation, teased me constantly, and were everything my sister wasn't. "Hey Marjorie, babysitting tonight?" Ryan sneered. They were planning to visit the old sanatorium across the lake, claiming it was the perfect night for it. I grabbed my sister's hand, hoping she wouldn't go, but after some back and forth, she decided to bring me along. "Come on, Melissa," she said. "What's the worst that could happen? It'll be fun, like an adventure." I said no, but she insisted, calling me a crybaby. She didn't want to miss out on time with her friends, or with Ryan. We took the shortcut through the woods, the sky darkening as we biked. The water on the lake was still, reflecting the ominous clouds. I clung to my sister, terrified of where we were headed. They left their bikes on the beach and headed for the boathouse. I tried not to look across the lake, where the sanatorium loomed like a haunted castle. Inside the boathouse was an old rowboat. Despite my fear of water, I was forced into the boat with them. As Ryan rowed us across the lake, Ashley teased me, saying that something lived at the bottom of the lake that fed on little girls like me. My sister told her to stop, but I was already terrified. We reached the other side of the lake and stepped ashore near the sanatorium. The air smelled of decay, and the sky rumbled with distant thunder. I clung to Marjorie as we followed Ryan toward the building. He was determined to get inside, and after finding a small rusty door, he pushed it open. We stepped into a musty cellar, the cold air thick with the smell of rot. Ryan lit his Zippo, revealing graffiti on the walls. One message, written in red, read, "If you close the door, it's already too late." Ashley, suddenly panicked, tried to open the door, but it wouldn't budge. The rest of us joined in, but it was stuck. That's when the dread truly settled in. "Let's find another way out," Ryan said, trying to calm everyone down. We wandered through the dark corridors for what felt like hours, searching for an exit. Every corner we turned seemed to lead us deeper into the maze-like building. Eventually, we found an old ward filled with rusty beds. One of the beds wasn't empty. A mummified body lay beneath the sheets, its face twisted in a permanent scream. Ashley screamed too when she noticed the body was wearing a watch identical to hers, complete with the same crack in the glass. Panic spread through the group, but we had no choice but to keep moving. The building was playing tricks on us. Every hallway looked the same, and no exit was in sight. At one point, we came across a large recreational room with a pool table, where Ashley found a golden sphere, perfectly smooth and heavy. As we marveled at the strange object, we heard a crash from the hallway. Something large was being dragged toward us. The creature that appeared in the doorway was unlike anything I'd ever seen. A massive head with long arms attached to its temples, pulling itself across the floor. Its eyes were giant golden spheres, just like the one Ashley had found. It cooed and snickered as it approached us, licking its lips with a blackened tongue. We threw burning books at it, which scared it away for the moment, but we knew it wouldn't be long before it returned. In our desperate attempt to escape, Ashley was caught by the creature. Her legs were crushed in its jaws before we could pull her to safety. She bled out in one of the hospital beds, her last words pleading for us to leave her behind. We ran and ran, but the creature and others like it seemed to be everywhere. Johnny was the next to fall, infected by a bug that crawled into his nose. He transformed before our eyes, his body contorting as spider legs erupted from his back. He was dragged away, screaming for his mother. Eventually, it was just me, my sister, and Ryan. We found a small room with a piano. Behind it, there was a flickering light, an unstable rift that seemed to lead to another world. But as we tried to escape, the creature returned. Ryan was caught, dragged away as he confessed his love for my sister. In the chaos, Marjorie threw me through the rift. I landed in a dark forest, and when I looked back, the rift had disappeared, along with my sister. I stumbled through the woods until I found the road, trying to find my way home. But when I told people where I was from, Ataraxia Springs, they said no such town existed. For years, I believed that the whole experience was a false memory, a trauma-induced fabrication. But last week, I received a letter delivered by a man who claimed to have found it among his great-great-grandmother's belongings. The letter was dated 1970 and addressed to Melissa Johansson. It was from my sister. She had survived that night, finding her way to another time and place where she lived a full life. The letter told of her adventures and how she had never stopped searching for me. It ended with the words, "I still think of you every day. I miss you." Through tears, I whispered, "I miss you too."